more than 500 days into the pandemic, and it seems there are so many COVID studies. Studies that conflict with each other. How do you study the studies? We found a bunch of bogus businesses that were approved for COVID relief money. The fraudster manipulated state business licenses in the scheme. We hear from Colorado's Attorney General. This buffalo is about to roam or run. Her name is Ralphie, just like the other live mascots before her. What's behind her name? A good note and story to share, overcoming the odds. We are keyed up. Next. We live in a world where our understanding of COVID is always changing, a world riddled with good information and bad information, where it feels like we blink and a new study is out that sometimes defies what we thought we knew about the COVID virus. Tonight, Anusha Roy takes a look at how to figure out when to trust new research and when to ask more questions.
The amount of information about COVID that's available can leave you dizzy, especially when you're reading articles and studies with phrases like early data, skeptical scientist, studies experts wish came with the label "don't try this at home," or numbers that conflict with information from other countries. So how do you make sense of all of that?
It's murky, it's hard.
It's a lot even for a professor from MSU Denver.
I have training in immunology and microbiology.
If there are multiple studies all pointing to the same conclusions, those are typically more reliable. For studies that haven't been peer-reviewed yet, keep an eye on the data and whether the results change.
The fact that a study has not been peer-reviewed doesn't mean it's wrong. It needs additional oversight.
And there's also a need to strike the right balance of when to share information with the public.
There's some news outlets and scientific communities that are pushing results out too fast. And there are others that are maybe hitting the right balance better than others.
Part of the responsibility sits with us here in the news.
Can be accepted, they can be rejected, but they are often asked to repeat an experiment or do a different experiment, and conclusions are softened or changed. And by the time that is complete, the news cycle has often moved on, right? And then it's left, to the reader to try to sort this out.
Dr. Dawn Fry with Swedish, whose practice is involved in at least a dozen clinical trials a year, pushing out information and learning how medical studies work has its benefits as long as people are smart about it.
This type of information and its accessibility to the general public is much higher than anything I've ever seen.
So how can we all be really smart about this? So before you start sharing things as facts, you should really be checking where the study was published and if it's reputable. What's the sample size in the study? Was it big enough to return reliable results? And then, of course, if there are multiple studies that are pointing to the same results as well, Jeremy, all of those are indicators that are good, that you're looking at something that's a legitimate source.
Yeah, you know, science is always changing, and so timing really here is key, too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You want to look at when this study happened, right? So if it was a study that was focused on 2020, all parts of it may not hold up anymore, right? We didn't have things like the Delta variant at that time or didn't know as much about it. And that has really changed the landscape of COVID. And also just remembering that scientists are researching this as we are living through the pandemic. So they are turning out information as quickly as possible while we are all still very hungry for more information as well.
That's right. Nothing is rigid these days. Thank you, Anusha. Colorado is preparing for another increase in demand for COVID-19 vaccines. It is fueled by booster shots, the back-to-school season, and vaccine mandates by employers. To help handle the increase, the state will be giving federal funding to primary care providers. It'll pay for things like extra staff, extra hours, and technology. The unvaccinated continue to drive our hospitalization numbers. Right now, 796 COVID patients are in Colorado hospitals. 693 of those patients, 87% there, are not vaccinated. 103 hospitalized patients are vaccinated with breakthrough infections. While I fill in here on Next from time to time, the main hat I wear here at 9 News is investigative reporter, which leads me to talk about $2 million of your tax dollars, money that was supposed to help small businesses during the pandemic. Instead, we found it was approved for numerous bogus businesses. Whoever's behind this scheme used state business licenses to fool the government. I spoke to Colorado's Attorney General about that. After diving in government data, we uncovered 33 defunct and non-existent businesses used to get your tax money.
Fulcrum Asset Management Incorporated. Alrighty, here we go.
They all traced to one Denver office.
Kenyon Plaza.
We exposed how the culprit hijacked old business licenses through the Secretary of State's website and renewed them on paper, making them appear legit. Shortly after, COVID relief was approved to the tune of $2.3 million.
If you go into a government database and you engage in fraudulent behavior, applying for a business in the name of somebody else without really an ability to operate it, that's fraud. That's fraud that we can prosecute civilly and criminally.
Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser is calling for a new state law, a False Claims Act, a law that would make it easier to go after people who defraud the government.
We need a remedy to make people pay, literally and figuratively, and we need an incentive for, often they're called relators, to report fraud. This is often called a whistleblower law. There is a federal False Claims Act law. We don't have one here in Colorado.
Our investigation included a white-collar crime expert who said the state's business licensing system is rife with fraud. It's too easy for people to hijack old business licenses, he said.
I would say that in Colorado, it's really, really easy to do. And it's really easy to do if you just tell a lie to a computer. Nobody checks.
Because it is so easy for people to go in there, hijack business licenses, take them over, and commit fraud. What's your reaction to that?
My view of how we in government have to operate are stewards on behalf of the public, engaged in ongoing learning and ongoing innovation. If we can improve any number of government databases to protect against fraud, we're all in to help.
You can watch our full investigation into this COVID fraud scheme by going to the next Facebook page or 9news.com. We can say several federal investigators have taken an interest in our findings. Let's see if they investigate and find where that $2 million went. There's more problems for the Mesa County Clerk's office. The deputy clerk is now facing charges for alleged burglary and cybercrimes. The charges against Belinda Nicely are not related to the data breach investigation into the county clerk's office there. Her charges come from being at the office, even though she's on paid leave due to a separate personnel matter. Investigators believe at the time she was also using the computer and passwords belonging to County Clerk Tina Peters, who is under investigation by the district attorney and the FBI. Let's talk about the Aurora Police Department, whose officers keep making headlines. A drunk officer found in a police unit who kept his job, officers forcing little black girls to the ground at gunpoint, officers who made a mocking photo after Elijah McClain died, an officer who just last month pistol whipped a black man, all on camera. After yesterday's indictments of several officers involved in the death of McClain, the Aurora Police Association responded, saying, quote, "Our officers did nothing wrong." It called the public's response hysterical overreaction that has damaged the police department. This group is not the official union, and yesterday the police department pointed that out, saying the APA does not represent all police. But the APA does have 200 members out of the 700-plus police force, including 2 officers now indicted. Oh, there's damage, and there are good officers who were trying to fix that damage. And the APA response, is that going to help him? His doctor said he would never play.
It's just how I have to naturally play, so I've just adapted, and sometimes I forget that I do play differently.
Oh, he can play. And as CU's newest mascot prepares for her first run, we wanted to know how Ralphie got her name in the first place.
We were 20-something-year-old college students, going out and drinking every night, not every night. But if we did, we knew what Ralph meant.
We are where the buffalo roam. Next. There is little doubt that Ralphie is the greatest mascot in all sports. Wait a minute. University of Colorado alum Marshall Zellinger wrote this intro. Ralphie 6, the newest live buffalo for CU, runs for the first time at tomorrow night's home opener. Marshall tried to run down the true story of how Ralphie came to be known as Ralphie.
What's in a name? Here comes the story of how Ralphie became Ralphie, depending on what you believe.
In your face, Ralph.
Meet Lex Pinson, one of the first buffalo handlers at CU.
I named Ralphie.
Lex says he submitted the name Ralph as part of a naming contest in 1967.
The name was kind of a tongue-in-cheek, thumb your nose at the establishment, and it was kind of meant to conjure up the act of vomiting.
That's probably not what you expected to hear. Well, there's another version, too.
Do you believe Ralphie is named for your brother?
Actually, I do.
Donna Hobscheid is the sister of Ralph Wallace. He passed away last year. Ralph was CU's junior class president in 1966 when the school got a live buffalo mascot.
The college newspaper, according to a friend of his, Bruce Payne, said that they needed to name it. So there was a contest. The junior class apparently picked Ralph.
But it's certainly possible that, both stories could be true, I guess.
Whichever story you believe, Ralph morphed to Ralphie when it was realized she was a she.
I frankly, when I submitted the name, did it as a joke.
Lex's contributions go beyond the name, or not, depending on who you believe. Lex and his friends sold buffalo stock to fund Ralph's trip to the Blue Bonnet Bowl. Stock earned you petting and feeding privileges and a locket of hair, even a Ralph poster.
My naming of it seems to be, lost in history. I have a few friends that say, hey, you should get credit for this. And I kind of shrug my shoulders and go, whatever.
There is a third story that Ralphie is named for the sound she makes running and snorting. Nope. I'm throwing that one out. Right.
This story reminds me, I hate to say this, it reminds me of the Ralphie burger that you can get at my brother's bar in Denver. The oldest bar, great burger. Anyway, sorry for that tangent. Sorry, Ralphie.
Hopefully not
great
made from
burger.
Hopefully not made from okay, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Marshall.
A beautiful day in Colorado, a cooler day, and those clouds coming through will bring another round of showers tonight. Our high today only 85. Temperatures in the high country in the 70s. And additional showers moving off the foothills tonight will bring a bit of thunder, lightning, and rain, but the storms are not severe. There's not a flash flood watch out, but we had a lot of rain yesterday, so we're watching these cells pretty closely. And some of the thunderstorms that come up out of the south tonight may go late into the night, so just be aware. You might have a little rain on the roof overnight, and then again tomorrow, and then those storms move out onto the eastern plains. The smoke and haze, better air quality here as well as most of that smoke and haze lifts northward. Temperatures in the 70s heading through the dinner hour, and we have a beautiful weekend forecast with sunshine and 80s for the holiday.
The last 12 months seem like a blur, so what did we used to talk about? On this day 1 year ago, we were answering a popular viewer question: what's up with the vacant KMART off of Monaco and Evans in Denver? We told you last year the company that owns the land was planning to build apartments there. It was also used as a COVID testing site for several months until last May. But here's what it looks like today. The old KMART building is finally just being demolished. The process started this week, a little behind schedule. Construction on the apartment complex was supposed to start last month. The real estate company says they're still waiting on permits. What most do with 10 fingers, he does with 6.
Music is so universal that it's just meant for everyone, no matter what your circumstances are.
His music has a message, and people in Colorado are adaptive. The proof is in the most Colorado thing we saw today. Next. Hundreds of musicians applied to CU Denver to study music this fall. Many of them needed to audition for their course of study. This includes one young man who overcame a condition at birth and the naysayers.
I'm going to do a little Taylor Swift. I'm gonna do Betty. The doctor told my mom that I was gonna be fine. I wouldn't end up being a pianist, but I'd be fine. I'm Hunter Gamble. I go to CU Denver. I'm in the College of Arts and Media. I'm studying piano performance and music business. So I had a stroke when I was born. It was kind of a rough birthing process. After the stroke, I was diagnosed with a mild case of cerebral palsy, and it's just affected movement in my left arm. And so you'd think, why does he play piano if he can't use all 10 of his fingers? But it's just something that I was really drawn to. To other people from the outside, it may look weird that I play with 6 fingers, but it's just something that I've lived with my whole life. It's just how I have to naturally play, so I've just adapted, and sometimes I forget that I do play differently. I had to get accepted into the school, and then I had to do an audition, but with COVID and all that, I had to do my audition online. I was kind of nervous. I wasn't sure if they were gonna be totally like accepting of the way that I played, just because I know that like this is a big deal studying music. But so I just kind of prefaced how I play in my audition videos, and everyone who looked over my audition videos were really impressed, and I was really relieved when I got that email saying that I was accepted. You have nothing to lose, especially when it comes to music, just because I think music is so universal that it's just meant for everyone, no matter what your circumstances are.
Hunter told our photojournalist Mike Grady that Stevie Wonder is one of his favorite pianists. He hopes sharing his own story may inspire other people like him in the future. When life gives you lemons, you reach for your skis. The most Colorado thing we saw today, and your feedback next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a Rocky Mountain MacGyver. Our viewer, Kyle, not Kyle Clark, had some trouble keeping his lunchbox closed, so he did what any other Coloradan would do. He went straight for the skis. He removed the rubber strap that holds the skis together and fastened it around his lunchbox to keep it closed. Problem solved there, right? Send us the most Colorado thing you saw today by email or on social media, or you can tag us with the Hey Next hashtag on Twitter. A lot of you are asking, when can I see Ralphie, the Buffalo Run? You can check out Ralphie Run at the game. Ralphie will hit to the field about an hour before kickoff, so you can check that out before 7 p.m. tomorrow. Also, some viewer feedback tonight. Some of you know I'm from New Mexico, and we had this guy named Nick say the Pueblo chili will always be greater than Hatch chili. Why do you have to put me in this position, Nick? Why? Why? This is not a good position to be in. Thank you all for watching. I'll be filling in again tomorrow night. See you next time.